Welcome to my giant bow sew-along. They're perfect for Christmas, but I think if you do them in different fabrics, you could do these all year round. For the body of your bow, you'll need a piece of fabric 35 inches wide by 18 inches high. For the tails, you'll need one piece of fabric 47 inches wide by 16 inches high. You'll want some wadding, which is what gives the bow body its nice depth, and that's one piece of fabric 34 inches by 8 inches, one piece 6 inches wide by 4 inches high, some cam snaps or a button, and a small ring to hang it with. First, taking the piece that's for the body of the bow, you want to fold it right sides together and then clip or pin all the way across the top. Head to your machine and sew all the way along that top edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once that's done, you want to just finger press that seam open and take it to the iron and give that a good press. And when that's done, you turn the whole thing the right side out. And then press the whole thing so that the seam that you've just made is down the middle of that piece. Then get your wadding, and we're just simply going to slide that inside the body of that bow that you've just created. Wiggle it around and just make sure that it's sitting all nice and flat and that the ends are flush with the ends of the body of the fabric you've just sewn. Fold it in half with that seam on the inside, and then align the end pieces and just pin or clip them in place. Then head to your machine and with a 1/4 inch seam allowance just sew that end closed. Then just to neaten that raw edge, you can either use pinking shears or an overlocker or a zigzag stitch just to stop those ends from fraying too much. Now open it out so that seam is in the middle facing you, and then pop that to one side. Next, we're onto the tails, so getting the piece of fabric, fold it in half lengthways right sides together, and then just pin or clip along that long edge. Fold the whole thing in half and just line up those two end pieces. And then you want to make a mark 6 inches in from the end of that top raw edge you've pinned, and draw a line, diagonal line, from that mark down to the corner, and this is what gives your tails their diagonal shape. And then just cut that edge off. Once that's done, you just want to pin round those end pieces as well so that all those raw edges are closed. Then finding where the centre of that tails piece is, you then want to mark a piece about 3 finger widths wide, and that's where you're not going to sew because that's where you're going to turn the tails the right side out. And once that's done, we're going to go to the machine and sew that raw edge closed. So with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, sew all the way along, leave that gap in the middle where you need to turn it out, and then carry on all the way to the end and just back stitch at the beginning and the end just to lock your stitches. Once you've finished sewing, you just want to clip off those corners. Make sure you don't cut into the stitches, but it just means when you turn it the right side out, it will sit much nicer. Then find that gap that you left in your sewing and turn the whole thing the right side out. And you can poke out the corners nice and gently, first with your fingers and then with either a hera marker or a chopstick. I like to run my turner all the way round the edges because that makes it easier when I go to the iron and give the whole thing a good press. Find the gap where you turned it through, and then at your machine with a number 1 stitch size, so it's really little, just sew that closed. Now find the small piece of fabric that you cut, take it to the iron, and first we're going to press the ends, the shorter ends, in by about a 1/4 inch. That just means that you haven't got a raw edge showing. Do that on both ends, and then you want to fold the whole thing in half and give that a good press. Open it up and fold one side into that centre you've just pressed. Give that a press. Do the same on the other side. Once you press those two, just fold them in and fold the whole thing in half again. Hopefully it makes sense if you watch what I'm doing on the video. And then just clip that long edge closed, and we're going to head to the machine and we're just going to top stitch all the way around the piece. Now it's time to start putting the whole thing together. So first, get your tails, fold it in half so you know roughly where the centre of that piece is. Get the body of your bow and place it in that centre and make sure that the seam is face down against the tails. I find it easier to grab a hair tie or an elastic band for this bit, and all you want to do is you're just bunching up the body of the bow and the tails together in that centre piece, and then just put your elastic around that middle bit. I like to do this because then you can wiggle everything around and you just make sure that it's all kind of lined up properly. And the last step is to get that piece of fabric that you sewed, and we're just going to wrap that round the middle, and what that does is it hides any of the raw edges that you had from where you sewed the seam on the bow. To keep this closed, I use cam snaps because it's super easy. You could sew on a button, or you could just hand sew it closed once you've slipped the loop through that you're going to use to hang it with. So once you've done that, you just wrap it round, clip it or sew it in place, and you're done, and you're ready to hang up your gorgeous giant bow ready for the Christmas break. If you like my sew along, please do like, share, send me pictures of the ones you make. And if you'd like to say thanks so that I can keep these sew alongs free, feel free to buy me a coffee. The link is in my bio. Thanks.